everyone. Welcome back to Ask Amy. I have a question today from Melissa, and it's about goals and setting intentions and kind of going after things that we want and how that ties in to this understanding. So let me read her question because she wrote it a lot better than I just said it. So Melissa says, "Hey Amy, I'm wanting to understand more about intentional thought. I deeply appreciate and am playing with the premise that fresh thought is always available when our minds calm down. I've had this experience and appreciate it. I'm wondering about how you think about goals, moving forward in a career or a business, deciding what to focus on daily. Is it possible that from a peaceful place within, using wisdom, we can identify and direct our focus to thoughts that serve us, help us show up as love in the world, help us do things to be of service? I'm open to insight and appreciate your sharing your understanding of this." So, yeah, thank you, Melissa. So it's a good question, and it's a common question sometimes, I think, especially when we're just starting to kind of see something about this, like this idea, like you mentioned, Melissa, this idea that fresh thought is always showing up. We don't have to put it there. It works through us. It happens through us. As people start to see that, I know for me, when I first kind of heard that, it just occurred to me, or it didn't occur to me, I heard it. It was like, oh yeah, I can see that. When someone suggested that, it was like, oh, that never occurred to me until right now when you just suggested that. And then it became so obvious. I was like, of course, I'm not thinking all my thoughts. I'm not putting them there. I'm not directing all of them. There is absolutely, in my experience, a steady stream of stuff, thought, ideas, things that we're attracted to, things that we feel kind of pulled toward, that are always just showing up. And you say, you're playing with the premise that fresh thought's always available when our minds calm down. It is, and it's available when our minds don't calm down. So even from a busy mind, from what I've seen in this, like, new thought is always showing up, and we aren't there making it happen. It's just how we work all the time. Busy mind, clear mind, all the time. So that is awesome. And it can bring up this question sometimes, like you have, Melissa, about, yeah, but what about intention? What about moving towards stuff? So again, I'm just going to reread a portion of this. So you say, you're thinking about moving forward in career or business, deciding what to focus on daily. Is it possible that from a peaceful place within, using wisdom, we identify and direct our focus to thoughts that serve us and that can help us be of service? When I hear that, it sounds like way more work than we need to do. So, yeah, I guess there's this way in which we can kind of direct our thoughts, and this is really hard to kind of talk about because it's more of a feeling than a formula. It's really tough to kind of put words to it. But I want you to kind of sit with this feeling of like thought coming up, and we go with some and we don't go with others, and that we aren't necessarily in there doing that to the extent that it looks like. So for us to, like you said, show up as love in the world, be of service, grow a business, do things that help others, we probably can in some ways, and maybe sometimes it feels like we with our minds think about what we want or what we want to do and then move toward that. But there's this other way where, again, fresh thought shows up within us and kind of moves us forward. So even in these things that you're talking about, even in setting goals, even in coming up with ideas for what we want and moving towards something, it doesn't feel to me like I'm in there doing that with my mind. And it certainly doesn't feel really complicated like this kind of sounds. And maybe I'm hearing more complexity than you mean, but that we direct and focus our thoughts to things that serve us, because it looks to me like that's our nature. Like that's what's happening by default. Is by default, if it occurs to us to do something that serves someone or that moves our business forward or that, is loving, that's kind of natural. And it's like, that seems like it'll show up without our minds having to decide to do that and then focus somewhere to make that happen. So it's a little tweak, but it's also huge in a sense, because we're really looking at it as if it's something that kind of just happens through us rather than something that we have to do. So I don't know, in thinking about this, I thought I wanted to kind of try to describe a little bit of how it looks for me, since you're kind of asking that, to come up with goals, or to move toward goals, and to think about growing a career or a business, for example, because those are things that I'm always doing. And yeah, I'm a little hesitant in a sense, because it also, like, in thinking about how to describe this, it feels a little like I'm going to try to describe to you how to ride a bike, or what it feels like how you're hungry or how you're full. Like, these are things that are just a felt sense, right? I mean, you kind of have that idea that the second you try to put words around it and describe it, you've kind of lost it, and you're probably going off in another direction as soon as you try to put words around the indescribable. So with that caveat, I do want to kind of look at this because I think it might be helpful. So for me, it looks less like focused intention, thinking about what I want as a goal, and then thinking about the steps that it'll take to get there, which is how it used to look more. And it feels a little more like, again, don't take this too literally, but it feels a little more like I'm going through life and suddenly I realize that something has like a lot of juice to it. Like I want 10,000 people to go through the Little School of Big Change. Or I have a goal, I suppose you could say. I don't really think of it as a goal so much, but I suppose you could say I have a goal of filling this. I'm doing a coach mentoring program starting in September with Steve Chandler. I have a goal of filling that group, right? Now, that's just something that when I think of these things, I'm not thinking of it with my head first, like, oh, these would be great ideas. This would save the world. This would make me, mean that I'm successful, or mean whatever. It isn't like that. They're truly things that kind of jump up and find me rather than me finding them. So when there are things like that, and there are often, big and little, it's like, okay, that just showed up. Fresh new thought brought that one. I didn't put it there. But right now, in any given moment, it's like there's almost like a pull there. Now, that doesn't mean, now my mind could take that, my ego could take that and say, okay, what's the timeline, and how's it going to look, and how are we going to get there? And I'm not saying those are bad things or unhelpful things to consider. I think in a lot of cases, those are great things to consider. But again, I'm kind of notice where the head leads versus the head supports. So it's like my intellect and my planning and my logic can support something that's coming up through me rather than lead what comes up through me and be in charge of the whole thing. So in those cases, like just for those goals, if you want to call them that, they're just things I get really excited when that pops in my head. I like it. It feels good. They both are like, that would be awesome. And so it's almost like there's an antenna up, like, okay, anything that matches, I'm ready, come over here. I want to hear about that. But I'm not out doing it, kind of leading it with my head. Now, when the antenna's up though, this can be, again, this is where it's tough to get it in words, but when the antenna's up, often what shows up or occurs to me is, what can I do? So it's not passive. This is not a passive thing. It's just more that the action and the intellect and the planning are informed, again, by the juice, by the feeling, by the antenna up kind of brings those ideas forward. And so it kind of flows through rather than the head being in charge and saying, okay, if I want to fill this program, I need to reach out to this many people, this many days. No, it's nothing like that. It's more like I'm responsive to ideas coming up. And because my antenna's up and there's just energy behind this idea for me, or this goal for me, if you want to call it that, stuff shows up. Lots of that antenna grabs a lot of stuff. And then when it shows up and it occurs to me to act on it, I do. So I don't know if this, I really hope this kind of resonates and you can sort of feel it. Again, don't listen to the words too closely. But I have all kinds of you know, I don't think of it as intention or goals anymore, but things that just kind of show up that are like, yeah, that would be great. I mean, you can see them over here. There's all kinds of things on my board, all kinds of action being taken, all kinds of, it's not at all passive, all kinds of stuff being done and things being done. But even with these kind of things, it's like something shows up. Often, sometimes I just act on it in the moment. Often it ends up over here. And then as it occurs to me, it's like this is the antenna in a sense. So again, I'm not saying here's your strategy, go make your wall a whiteboard. But just by kind of putting it out there, or just by it coming up within me, there's an antenna up. And so naturally, as I'm going through my day, things will occur to me around these things that then I can act on. So it just feels very responsive to wisdom, or to something I would call wisdom. Rather than head leading it, setting a goal, intention. And again, maybe those are just the words, you know, but just see if you can kind of get a feel for that order of things a little bit in there. Goals are great. Goals are great. And there's very common misunderstanding, and you're not saying this, Melissa, but people do all the time. And I get it. It's easy to get caught up in that, oh, I'm not gonna want for anything. I'm not gonna ever make anything happen anymore. I'm just gonna sit around and let life happen to me. Well, that's certainly not my experience at all. All kinds of stuff comes up that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go for that. And without all the other thinking looking so real, you know, there's still doubt and fear and oh, that's too hard, and who do you think you are, and all that stuff that comes up. But because I know something about that, they don't really get in the way. And because I don't really care if I succeed or fail like I used to, that doesn't really get in the way. And so it's a lot more fun. It's almost the same process that it used to be, but oh, so much easier, so much better results, and so much more fun. So I hope that's helpful. It is a common question. So thank you for sending it, Melissa. And thank you guys for being here. I'll see you next week.